Now it's time for something completely different, which unfortunately doesn't feature me talking, but it does feature another member of our faculty. Again, we're trying to give you a little taste of what it's like to actually come to Augsburg. So I'd like to introduce you to history professor, chair of the Medieval Studies program, and all-around swell guy, Professor Phil Adamo.
Thanks very much. Welcome to Augsburg. We're very happy to have you here. I'm right in the middle of writing a history of the college. In 2019, the year that you would graduate, if you come to Augsburg, the college is celebrating its 150th anniversary. Yeah! Woo! 150. Yeah. To write that history, I have to go and find where the skeletons are. And the skeletons on our campus are all in an attic on Old Main. I'm not sure if you can just dim the lights a little bit. You might be able to see that better. This is a bone from a skeleton that was found in an attic on one of the buildings on campus. And I don't know, not that kind of bone. If you can tell, can anybody tell what that is? Let me give you a little more perspective here. It's big. Any thoughts, any ideas? Yeah, what do you think? Is it a hip? Who's hip? I mean, you're pretty hip. I saw your mad scientist thing, but it is a hip. No, it's a jawbone, actually. But from what kind of animal do you think? It's a whale bone. Absolutely. It's a whale bone. Now, I started thinking to myself, okay, why is there a whale bone in the attic in one of the buildings on campus? And I went to where all of the truth is revealed. I went to the Augsburg Echo. Our school paper. Now, this is just last week, and you can tell that the Echo covers all the most important stories in our community, right? Local bagel shop closes. That was the front page story. Not making this up, right? Not Photoshopped. This is the real front page. Bagel shop closes. A big disaster in our community. Actually, this is a copy of the Augsburg Echo from 1916. Where the story of the whale bone is revealed. And let me just show you, there's a part of the Echo called the Locals section. It has a bunch of little notices of things happening on campus. And there's one line there, let's see if I can make that bigger. It says, 3 enormous pieces of whalebone have been given to the museum by Mr. Birkeland. Now, I have 2 questions. First of all, we don't have a museum on our campus, so that's a little curious. And who's Mr. Birkeland? But I found out through further research, right, we actually used to have a museum called the Mission Museum. Now, Augsburg was first founded as a seminary, and we used to train pastors and preachers to go out into the world, all over the world, to spread the Christian message and try to convert the heathens and the pagans and all the non-Christians, right? That was, but that was sort of the attitude, right? In the 19th century, this was very common. It wasn't just Augsburg. Lots of people were doing this. And these missionaries, they would go out, and then when they came back, they would bring stuff back, like little drums from Africa. They would bring foot-binding shoes from China, all sorts of curiosities, and they'd end up in this museum. And this is where the whale bones ended up. Now, who is Mr. Birkeland? There he is right there. That's a dead whale, luckily, that they've just killed. That's another thing that used to be really in, right, to just go out and kill whales. Not anymore, right? Now we have a Greenpeace environmental studies program on campus. But here's a picture of Mr. Birkeland. He was actually a student here at Augsburg when it was a seminary. He became a pastor and a missionary. He traveled all over the world. He went to Europe and India and China and was a missionary. And he even wrote a book, a best-selling book, called Light in the Darkness, Christianity and Paganism, all about his adventures, traveling the world, spreading the word of Christianity and converting, right, the heathens and the pagans and all the non-Christians, which was what they did in the 19th century. Okay, let's not judge them. Let's just try to understand. Now, Birkeland stopped being a missionary after a while, after he became a great successful writer, and he went into business. He invested in oil wells in Texas and Oklahoma. He was a lumberjack. He was a timber baron in the great Northwest. And then he went up to Alaska and bought this whaling station and turned it around, turned it into a tremendously successful business, and became a kind of millionaire. He wanted to come back and give something back to the college, right? So Hint, hint, subtle message, right? When you become alums, you should come back and give something back to the college. He has lots of money, and one of the things he's doing, he's of course giving whale bones to the college. He's also giving great donations of money to the college, and he becomes the president of the board of trustees of Augsburg College. At this point, it's the 1920s, and when Augsburg was first founded, try to imagine this. You look around now, and we're right in the middle of the city, and we think that's really awesome to be in the city, because there are all sorts of opportunities and possibilities. But in 1872, when we first moved to Minneapolis, there was nothing around here. It was a 45-minute walk to get to anything that looked like downtown. And if you looked in every direction, there were just fields with cows and pigs and chickens. There was nothing around here. But eventually, by 1920, Minneapolis got bigger, and it started encroaching on the campus. I say encroaching because people on the campus started to get nervous. As the city got closer, temptation started to come our way. Alcohol, prostitution, movie theaters. I mean, things that could really corrupt the youth studying here at Augsburg, trying to be good missionaries. So, there was a plan. There was a plan that Birkeland came up with all of his money, to move Augsburg away from the city out to the country, like that rurally located college where the illiterate students go. What's it called? Yeah, whatever. The people at Augsburg wanted to be like that. They wanted to be away from the temptation of the city and out in the country. And so he came up with this plan called Augsburg Park. It's actually a kind of a clever plan. He bought up a bunch of land, and he was going to sell lots on half of the land so that people could buy a lot and build a little house, and then they'd be by the lake, and they'd be in the forest, and it was a very pastoral setting. It was all very beautiful, but they'd be right next to this college campus, so they could participate in the life of the college, in the life of the mind, and it would be this sort of idyllic setting where the college students would also be out in the country. And all of this was just fantastic, right? He was going to raise money by selling some of the lots, and they'd use that money to build the campus in this rural location. Then a terrible thing happened. This is a later edition of the Augsburg Echo from the 1920s, and it says, Augsburg mourns the loss of a friend. Here's a closer reading. It says, Knut Birkeland, whose untimely and mysterious death was recorded in the previous issue of the Echo. Now, untimely and mysterious death, those are words that just set a historian on fire. I mean, this is like, wow, I don't know what happened, but I want to find out. Birkeland, as I mentioned, he was an investor. He invested in oil wells, in timber, in whaling systems. He got involved with some sort of real estate deal, and the real estate deal started going south. And eventually, he was going to try to pull out of the real estate deal and get the guy who brought him into this into all sorts of trouble. And suddenly, Birkeland went missing, right? And here is a story about, from the newspaper, about how he's found in, his body is on a kitchen table in an apartment in a very seedy part of Minneapolis, a place where there are prostitutes all over the place, right? It seems very shady and iffy, and it looks like it's going to be a big scandal for Birkeland. This guy, Olaf Bruce, was the lawyer who was sort of bringing him into this deal, and it seems like maybe Bruce is connected to his kidnapping. It seems like they wanted to kidnap him just as long and hold him just long enough for the trial to blow over, and then the main witness wouldn't show up, and then Olaf Bruce would get off, right, scot-free. But they held him for 7 days, and they didn't give him any food. And Birkeland, who's 69 years old, sort of couldn't tolerate this, and so then he died. And then they tried to sort of dress it up. They put him up on a kitchen table, and they made sure that he was dressed, and they put a sheet over him. But after 7 days, they found his body, and it was still a great scandal. The police in Minneapolis were quite corrupt at this time. John Dillinger came here, Pretty Boy Floyd, all sorts of gangsters hung out in St. Paul and Minneapolis, and the cops were completely corrupt. This is the county attorney, sort of like the DA, a guy named Floyd Olson, who eventually goes on to become one of the most famous governors of Minnesota. Floyd Olson tried the case, and he tried to convince the Birkeland family just to let it go. He said, this is going to be too complicated. This is going to be a huge sex scandal. You don't want to defame the family name. Just leave it be. Don't press charges. But the family pressed charges anyway. The cops, who are corrupt, bring in lots of prostitutes. They pay them to testify, to lie on the stand, And the prostitutes all say, oh, Birkeland's here all the time. Oh, he's a regular customer. Oh, he's one of my favorites, right? And this is just looking worse and worse. Finally, Floyd Olson, under this fantastic sort of law and order moment, he convinces, he's cross-examining one of the witnesses, one of these prostitutes, and he gets her to admit that she's been paid to lie. Nonetheless, the case gets dismissed because they can't figure out who actually killed him. There are all sorts of attempts to find even the people who rented the apartment where he was found. This woman was arrested 16 years after the case was closed and accused of renting this, but they couldn't sort of prove it and press any charges. So nobody has ever been able to figure out how he died. It remains a mysterious case. But here's what you can take from this. All right? At some point, when you decide to come to Augsburg, your parents are going to ask, well, why do you want to come to Augsburg? And you're going to say, oh, because it's in the city. It's not like one of those other schools that's located way out there in the suburbs in the country. It's in the city. And why is it in the city, your parents might ask? And here's what you tell them. It's because a lumberjacking, whale-killing, oil-drilling former minister who made $1 million and tried to help the college by moving them out of town, got involved in a sex scandal and a shady real estate deal, got kidnapped, was murdered, found 7 days later on a kitchen table, fully clothed but clearly dead. And this created such a scandal that people stopped investing in this plan to move Augsburg to the suburbs, and that's why it's in the city. Okay? So just hang on to that. That's the answer that you need. That's all you need to tell your parents. And when you come here, enjoy the fact that it's in the city because there are all sorts of fantastic opportunities. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend.
Woo! All right.